everyone, this is a little video tutorial on how to actually stitch. First of all, I'll explain a little bit about the pattern that you would normally get in a kit. These squares here contain 100 stitches, so 10 across here and 10 down here. It's the same for every pattern that you get, really, that they are in blocks of 10. And if it's just quite a simple pattern like this, it's not so important, but on the really complicated patterns, sometimes it's a good idea to just concentrate, or if you're a beginner even, just concentrate on one 10 by 10 square at a time. Which brings me on to the Ada. Now this Ada, the cloth that you use is called Ada, and as you can see, it's got all these little squares on. So on this pattern, along here, 10 of these is 10 of these. Can't actually see. There we go, 10 of these. Ada can be different sizes. The squares can be different sizes, and Ada is generally done in counts of 14, 16 or 18. If you find bigger counts like 28, 32, things like that, they're generally called even weave or linen. For Ada, hopefully this doesn't have inches on this ruler, but what it means is that in an inch, if it's 14 count, there'll be 14 stitches. That's what it means. So 18 count would be 18 stitches in an inch of the cloth. So I'm pretty sure, even though this ruler doesn't have inches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, this is 14 count Ada, which is what I thought it was. Then you have your threads, which usually come like these. These are just unbranded threads that I'm using for this demonstration. And each thread, these are called skeins. They come on skeins, and you can put them onto bobbins, especially with bigger projects. It's probably going to be easier for you to put them onto bobbins, which I've shown in another video how to do bobbins. But each thread, I'm not sure if you can see, if you tap the end like this, it will break into 6 other threads. Let's just move these. So each thread is actually made up of 6 threads. So if you tap the end like this, you'll be able to separate them out. And you need to be separating them out. Usually cross stitches are stitched with 2 of these strands. So what you would do, you would pull out a bit of your thread. You don't want to be pulling too much out. Maybe about 18 inches is probably enough to start off with. And cut all 6 strands off like this. Then, like I said, if you tap the end like this, it breaks up into 6. And pull one out at a time, because if you pull more than one out, it usually ends up being an absolutely knotted mess. So you pull one strand out like this. Same again. Tap the end. Get hold of another strand. There we go. So there, now you've got 2 strands. You've got 4 strands left here, and you've got 2 strands here. Pull them up together so that they're both the same length, and then thread your needle, which is here. It's best to make, usually kits come with needles, and it's best to make sure that you, if you're not using the needle from the kit, make sure you are using a cross stitch or embroidery, well, cross stitch needle. Normal sewing needles, the eye is going to be far too small and the end is going to be far too sharp. So thread your needle however you normally thread a needle. I'm not going to do a tutorial on that because there's so many different ways people do it, but that's how I do it. And then I go to the other end. I personally do knot my thread, and for a beginner it's probably the best idea to knot your thread. I know a lot of people do the loop start and all different sorts of starts so you don't have knots on the back of your work. I personally do not care what the back of my work looks like whatsoever. No one's ever going to see it. It's going to be in a frame. I don't feel like it's anything to be worried about. So I do a little loop like this and I knot the back of my thread like this. And I'll just put that aside for a second. You can just stitch with the Ada in your hand. You can crumple it up like this and stitch with the Ada in your hand like this. I always used to stitch like that, always, for years and years, 20 years nearly, I stitched like that and it wasn't an issue until I started to do bigger projects. Then it became an issue because it was impossible to scrunch up all the Ada in my hand and still be able to stitch properly. So you can use these, which are hoops. So they come in two parts. These are handy because they're two different colours. So for these, you put the white part underneath or the smaller part, because one will be slightly smaller than the other. Pull it as sort of tight as you can and then put the other one over the top and squeeze it in. Sometimes it's a bit of a two-man job, but this one's not too bad. So push it down and then tighten up the ring. And what I normally have to tighten it up this way around because I'm right-handed. So tighten up the ring like this. Sorry about my camera skills. Yeah, keep going until it's as tight as it can go. You don't want to be doing it so tight that it snaps, obviously. But yeah, so this should make your Ada quite nice. Quite nice and taut. Which makes it easier to stitch on. I'm just going to do it up a little bit more. So now you're ready to stitch. I'm going to get my needle. So to follow the pattern, what you need to be looking at is obviously the coloured squares. Now on big cross stitch projects, I usually start in the middle. And on this one, if I was starting in the middle, I would start here and I would usually go this way. Then do this, then do this, then do this. But just for the purposes of this video, I'm going to start at the top here. Because it's not going to be that important. I'm going to be able to fit the whole thing into the middle. So it's not, you know, with massive cross stitches, you need to be making sure that you start dead in the centre so that you have enough material to finish your project. But this one, that's not going to be an issue. So I'm going to have to do this upside down, which is going to be a bit difficult. So I'm going to start with this one here. And you literally, let me see if you can see. You just poke your needle through, and because you've got the knot on the back, in theory it's not going to come through. I'm going to just tie another knot just for this. Some people will be absolutely outraged that I'm using knots, but I just think for a beginner it's the easiest way. So you put your thread through like this, and each one of these squares you're going to cover with a cross, and then you come up there. Now I'm going to try and zoom in. So the second half of my video didn't record there, so I'm just carrying on from here. So as you can see, we're doing crosses. I'm going to be really careful not to knock my camera. Come up in one corner, down in the other. Now, if you've got a big area to fill all in one colour, there is a slightly quicker way of doing it, which I do if I've got a big area of colour to fill in, and it's by doing all the arms of one stitch, all the arms of the stitches going one way like this, and then going back the other way to complete the cross, And this does speed things up a little bit if you've got a big area of one colour to do. And then if you know, to swap colours, you obviously need to finish off at the back here. So what I do is I run my needle just through a couple of the stitches, 2 or 3 of the stitches. Sorry if you can hear my dog, he's decided to make noise. So I run my thread through the stitches like this, cut it, and then re-thread my needle and go on to the next colour. And to start off the next colour, you can do the same sort of thing, thread the needle through a few of the stitches with your knot in the end of the new colour, and that should hold the new colour, and then you can just continue stitching in the new colour. And that's basically it. That's how you cross stitch.